But I think the people part is the hardest part of business. I think it's the hardest part of life. I think, if you have the right strategy, you can get revenue. If you execute well, you can, make a profit. And if you have the right capitalization, and you should be able to take your cash and get into a brighter future. But if you have the wrong people, it's impossible to be happy.
Hey, welcome to 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. We're a father-son leadership podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And you know what the problem is, folks, this time of year? We're going to solve this because we got us I almost cussed. We got us an engineer. He's got a piece of paper over his head that says so. Christmas lights. God. Holy Jilly Weakers, man, I want to cuss so bad, but I'm going to wait until I get into the show.
I know you got so fired up about Christmas lights.
Oh, that's because I get frustrated with the daggum things. I'm looking out there at them. It's like, why'd they stop working? They just stopped working. It's like little Chinese guys put a timer in there. They got these little round cylinder things that you think are like the fuse. No, it's a timer. That guy at the factory, little Chinese guy, says, "Nope, you get 1 year, and if you don't turn them on all the time for that 1 year, you probably get a second year out of it. But if you do like we do with Miss Suzanne, and the lights got to be on, I used up all the time apparently."
I think you're wrong. I think they heard you talking trash about it now, and that's probably why they shut it off. You gotta be nice. They're making all the nice stuff over there. Come on. They do wonderful work.
I'm sorry, but
my solar panel totally still works. That $15 solar panel still works. 100%.
Yeah. You're right there with me on that one. I don't know. Our good friend Josh joining us. Josh, do you fight the Christmas light thing going on this time of year?
Every year, it's the question, do I untangle or buy?
That's right. And because you know what? Untangling may be the cause of them not working.
Oh, 100%.
But I did see some the other day that just came out. They have a magnetic connector. So you can quick connect and disconnect them, and they come in little strings. So even the Christmas light, there's hope for in innovation, I think.
All right.
See, I was going to say, I on the engineering side, I'm glad y'all are attacking that because I don't like the solution that the economics have come up with is if they got it so much cheaper, which then once a couple lights break, it's like I might as well just buy a new string. And that's probably not a great choice. So I'm glad that the engineers are fixing that.
Yeah, that's the landfill strategy. Yeah. Not a great one. Yeah.
Just keep the machine moving. Don't ask questions.
Yeah. Well, it leads to something. Matter of fact, was that this week's Monday Moments newsletter that I said something about the whole recycling thing? I've said it a couple of times because it's like, I know there was about a month ago, I went to the AUSA conference, the Association of the United States Army. Big conference in D.C. And you know what? They have banners and carpets and rugs just for this one, 2025. I asked a friend of mine, "Hey, man, who's involved in that industry? What happens to those things?" He says, "They throw them all away." I'm like, damn. Just like Christmas lights, right?
Oh, yeah. That's why you got to leave the year off those things, especially if you're like me. I throw a fundraiser and it doesn't go too well. You don't make your money back and all those kind of things. You can use those T-shirts next year. That's the trick.
Yeah, that's rolling in the big dollars when you put the date on the T-shirt, ain't it?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It is. Yeah. So, Josh, you've already given us a solution for the Christmas lights. Help me understand what brought you from being a platoon sergeant to chasing to be an engineer. Because you weren't an engineer in the Army, were you? You didn't.
No, I was a fueler.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. See, at least the Army made me an engineer. I got a piece of paper that says engineer, and the Army made me an engineer. That doesn't mean anything.
That didn't last that long, did it?
No. You were putting gas in trucks and then decided to be an engineer? What was the calling that got you going in that?
Well, I joined the reserve, so I was going to try to, serve while going to school. And of course, I joined right before we went to Iraq, so I ended up getting to also, be active duty.
Sucker.
Yeah, and so I, like any younger person, you kind of imagine, the challenge. Can I do it? And I think people join the Army for different reasons. Not some of us join because we actually need to feed ourselves, and that's not a horrible reason because it's a good way to serve. And I think a lot of people wake up in the Army realizing it's not what they thought they joined. For me, I had no idea. I, whatever saw growing up on the movies or TV or whatever is kind of what you put in your mind. But obviously, it's a whole different experience when you get in. And I just I wanted the experience. I wanted to be a soldier. I wanted to serve the country. I wanted to know what it was like. I wanted, kind of what you mentioned in your podcast or one of your talks. You said that you wanted to know what you're capable of. You wanted to test yourself. And so, in some way, everything I've done has really kind of been a little bit of a test and a little bit of like, hey, is it possible? Can I do this? Can this work out? And as far as the engineering goes, I joined the Army to help pay for school at Georgia Tech. My unit was in Athens, Georgia, near UGA, and I went to school in Atlanta near Georgia Tech. They're rivals. Mm-hmm. And we just did the monthly weekend warrior thing, and it turns out it was about enough money for me to barely survive on because I got the kicker as well. Because I joined in the Army when you enroll, they take you through MEPS, and that's where you kind of you get in, this, but you there's bonuses for certain jobs, and I joined. Mm-hmm. I was going to become a mechanic, but they needed fuelers at the unit, and that was the closest unit, so I ended up being a fueler, and spending a year delivering water and fuel and filling sandbags.
Yeah. How did you then, take that and talk about like looking for tests? How did that kind of shape your path forward? Because like you said, I'm sure, as an entrepreneur, looking for more and more tests, trying to make the business better. How did you kind of find that next test, if you will?
Well, I think part of it is a little bit of the delusion when we don't know what we don't know, and we say, hey, that looks like fun, and we're a little optimistic. So I'd say some of my tests were more accidental tests. They were just like, hey, this sounds like a good idea, and it's like, oh, wait, this is actually hard, and oh, wow, now I'm in it, and I got to finish it. So I think there was some of that. But as far as, when I did, the Army, I wanted to, see if I could pass. We lost about 30% of our basic training unit. We had some good, Air Force, air assault, airborne guys. Not Air Force, airborne air assault guys that were our drill sergeants. And then when I got into school, only about 44% graduated with my class. So that was another, challenge. And then I decided that I didn't really feel like I knew what I thought I should know. So then I wanted to stay and get my master's. And then I was like, man, I still don't know anything. And then I stayed for the PhD. And then I realized, well, I don't have enough. I'm not going to live long enough to know anything about anything. I might well go get start working, But I think so that's what it is. I kind of want to know what I could do, but I also wanted to learn about things I was fascinated with. And I just, I think, the physical world is amazing. And, the fact that you can zoom in to kind of whatever level of detail all the way to the, elements, and that we can use those laws of physics to design with. I just think it's really cool.
What's the logical jump then that got you? Because then business wise, we're talking about people, and people don't follow lots of rules, and there's all sorts of problems when it comes to that. How did you apply that philosophy in that field?
Well, I would say the people part is something that I'm learning about every day. I think the hardest person to learn about is really yourself. I think we think we know ourselves, but if Carl Jung knew anything about our brains, it is difficult to see our shadows. And I think, I think we're only as successful as seeing other people to the extent we can kind of see ourselves. So I'd say, I mean, I definitely check a lot of the boxes of the stereotypes of the engineers, in terms of like my preference for data or like trying to understand things a certain way. But fortunately, most of my employees are engineers too. So, we kind of say, well, if you're on the spectrum, please apply because, there's a good chance we want to hire you and work with you. But I think the people part is the hardest part of business. I think it's the hardest part of life. I think, if you have the right strategy, you can get revenue. If you execute well, you can, make a profit. And if you have the right capitalization, and you should be able to take your cash and get into a brighter future. But if you have the wrong people, it's impossible to be happy. And I think when it's good, it's great, and when it's hard, it's hard. And I think they don't teach you to teach when you're getting your PhD in engineering, and we don't teach you how to necessarily get along well with other people either. So I think a lot of the stuff you kind of learn trial and error and from your family and trying to read books and those things. But it was not I would say it wasn't easy for anybody, not super easy for me to transition, and also not necessarily easy for everybody else. But I think we just, you get up and you do your best. But yeah, the people part of it has been more challenging, I think, than the execution of the work, without a doubt.
Did you have, because, one of the things that I've always thought of with in the engineering mindset is modeling, testing and modeling. Did you have a model you were following when you decided to start your own business, or a person or whatever?
Yeah, there's a number of people for sure. And as far as modeling goes, my area in mechanical engineering is signals and systems and control systems, which is very, related to modeling and all those things. We early on, there's a guy named Kevin, and then my wife that, found the Entrepreneurial organization. It's EO, started by Vern Harnish. It was originally Gazelles, or Young Entrepreneurs organization, and now it's Entrepreneurs organization. And he wrote the book Scaling Up, where they basically go through the Rockefeller habits. And I was fortunate enough to join the accelerator in Charlotte. So like if your business made more than $250,000 and less than $1 million, you're eligible to participate in the accelerator. And so that was the model that I would say made the biggest difference, is basically focus on people, cash, strategy, and execution, and trying to implement the Rockefeller habits, which is, how well is your business aligned, and how well does everybody know what's going on. And then the other one is traction, where we use Gino Wickman's book. We did the poor man's version first, where we, buy the book and try to follow the instructions for about a couple of years. And then we ended up hiring an implementer, guy named Roy Pelkey out of Charlotte, studied physics and implemented EO in his business and had very good results. And he became our implementer. So between Scaling Up and Vern Harnish and Traction and Entrepreneur Organization and our implementer, we basically created a model against our, vision, core values, niche, product offering, target market, 3 uniques, and all those things. But these are all work in progress. You put it down on paper, it looks good, and you show it to somebody else, they say it looks great, and then you try to do it, and you realize that there's more opportunity to iterate and grow. So lots of systems, lots of people. I mean, obviously Jim Collins and many of the other ones, and heavily influenced early by some of the productivity, by even David Allen and Getting Things Done, and Brian Tracy and Eat That Frog, and all the people, all the voices along the way. They just encourage you to say, like, hey, let's refocus on those goals. Let's wake up again, and just let's see how far we can get. Just I don't know, just showing up is the model that we kind of always have, and then we've used a bunch of different models along the way.
Love that. I'm curious. Yeah. Well, that's why you got to keep tinkering on it, which actually brings me to a shorter question before I get to my bigger one here, which is, and this is funny to y'all two engineers, is there a different school of thought than the tinkering approach? Like, are all engineers tinkerers, or is there another school of thought that I am completely unaware of? I know that's a weird question, but that just popped in my mind. What do y'all think?
I think it's a great question. I mean, if the way that I interpret it is are you dealing with a person where good enough is good enough? Mm-hmm. And, often when you're dealing with an engineer, they're, basically trained for 4 years to measure good and not good enough and try to, optimize things. And so in a way, the engineer is trained to be forever dissatisfied with everything everybody's ever made because it can be better. And that's part of the thing that I think makes engineers annoying, but it's also part of what makes them so fascinating because, they come out with, new features. We just got a Ninja espresso machine recently over the last, month. I think we paid, $500 or $600 for it. But it has an automated burr grinder on it. It has a little load cell, automatically tells you, what you have in it. And I don't know, just the incremental, I guess, results and quality that make it into products for dissatisfied people over time it's a fascinating thing to observe, in the marketplace. And so I'd say, but then, not everybody's like that. Some people just like, hey, it's good enough. Doesn't matter. There's people that microwave their coffee from yesterday, So I think with, our product development projects, how we approach it, the engineer, and it's just like a mindset, right? So a good engineer has a mindset that basically can look at a physical artifact and say, could it be better?
So on that mind,
engineer to do that, most people can look at anything and, say how it could be better. The problem with engineers too, sometimes they'll defend their designs when they're bad, right? You're like, oh, why'd you do this? And they're like, well, this is why. It makes perfect sense. And you're like, well, it still sucks. And you're like, no, it makes perfect sense. It's like, no, it sucks. Yeah. So you get into these conversations. We have them regularly at Bravo Team,
What's on the mindset piece? I'm curious on how you balance that, because what comes to mind is from not that I'm working on the farm that much anymore, but one of my early cornerstones for my work ethic was working on the farm, and there's always more work to be done on the farm, which is a great way to get you to go do more work. It's a kind of crappy way to go through life because you're always looking for more things to do. You never feel satisfied with it. How do you go through life not hating everything you see because it's not engineered perfectly, because you want to tinker with that and this and all these different pieces? How do you, to kind of just sum it up, how do you stay happy looking at all the imperfections around you?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's like, does the musician love the finished work, or do they like the music? And I think, in order to have a career in something that's sustainable, you got to love it for what it is, and I think, some of us, we really want to accomplish what we're working on. We need to get to the other side. Other people, they don't have any concept of finishing. It's just not a big deal. They're enjoying being part of the process. And so I think, we use the working genius. It's helpful for us. It's a way of understanding the type of work that people prefer to operate in. And it just goes through widget, wonder, imagination, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity. It kind of says people enjoy two of those things. They're kind of good at two things, and they don't necessarily enjoy those things, the other two, that much. So somebody who's really good at invention and galvanizing would going to be the person to be like, hey, I got an idea. Hey, let's do this. Hey, what are you doing? Let's try this. Whereas, somebody that might be better at enablement, and tenacity might be the person that's there on time. They're a little early. They're ready to help. They don't have any agenda for what they necessarily have to accomplish at the end of the day. They just want to be a part of the process. And so, nothing is ever done. Nothing is ever good enough. Everything is always disappointing, frustrating, over-designed, under-designed, too expensive, not enough put into it. It's hard to get something to land perfectly. And also what we're talking about is landing something for perceived value, where you might say, oh, this is exactly what I want. The handle is the perfect size. And, somebody else would be like, oh, I can barely hang on to this thing. And that's why, you go to the grocery store and you get, you look at the aisles and we got all these things. It's hard for people to land at the same place. And that makes the engineering design very difficult because to your question, it's like, well, how do you know when you're done or if you're frustrated or you get done? It's like, well, you don't always agree, but I think good projects will know what done is like. And the fun is not necessarily, adding the features, but along the way, but it's doing the whole development. It's the interaction with the customer. It's the interaction with other teams. It's somebody delivering a little bit of software, something coming out of the machine shop, putting it all together. So the secret to being in this type of work indefinitely is to enjoy that process, that uncertainty that you go through every time you're making something new, and then hope you've listened to the customer well and everybody's happy and you don't lose money.
Let's talk about something else that I think is a fault of engineers, and that's risk and acceptance of risk, which is very counter. I was going to say counterintuitive, but it's not. It's just a counter. It's the opposite of being an entrepreneur. So when you decided to step away from, steady paycheck and got this nice job where I can count on the money every 2 weeks to let's start our own business and put people under me that I'm going to pay for them and through our efforts and all these sort of things. What did you do? What was your risk mitigation strategy to launch that?
Well, I didn't pay myself for 4 years, and then I kept my job as a professor for 4 years, and so that was one of the ways. And I kind of tried to get the business to where it would kick off enough cash to where I wouldn't be increasing the risk by sitting on payroll, So that's pretty much how we started. I basically tried to produce enough work to make sure everybody's salaries were taken care of, but not mine, and then we got to pay rent and, buy equipment and pay for software licenses. So I would say I thought I would get there a lot faster. I really did.
That damn clock just doesn't go like that, does it?
Yeah. My accountant said that every overnight success takes about 11 years. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in that line, in that same thought process, what was the first big purchase that you did to build out the shop? I mean, hiring people is one thing, but when you buy an asset, it feels so different. How was that?
It really does. And, it's kind of embarrassing to say here on a recorded podcast, but like I was terrified of the first 3D printer I bought. I think it was like $1,300, a Prusa from the Czech Republic. Josef Prusa, shout out to that dude. He makes great 3D printers for the money. He's been doing it for the years. He's one of the guys that made it through the wild west of 3D printers that you can still get for a decent price. I think it's $1,300, and I'm putting in my credit card on the website, and I felt all the anxiety and everything. And then later that year, we bought a CNC machine, which is $63,000, and that was one of the worst purchases I made, because what it did is it flipped our books to where we were no longer profitable, which people say, oh, buy assets. That way you pay less taxes. And that's kind of like the very, trivial way of thinking about it. But that's what I did. I didn't get an MBA. I didn't know the things I didn't know. I bought the CNC machine and found out later that the SBA would have given me, millions of dollars to grow the business if I had not bought that machine. But when I bought it, it laid it on my books, and then it made the numbers to where I wasn't fundable from the banks. And so, I felt every bit of, I felt it all. You feel the dollars when you own the company. You feel your mistakes.
Oh yeah, yeah. I got my good buddy Tony. Similar thing, bought. Except he didn't hire the people. He bought the machines and then hired the people. And and he's an engineer, mechanical engineer also. And yeah, the stress that he went through with all those assets, because part of the reason he bought the assets was he got a good deal. Shop closing up 25 cents on the dollar sort of thing. Well, how do you pass that up? But yeah, it puts you right in that same sort of thing.
But there's a reason that shop's closing.
yeah, exactly. But of course you can do it better, right? That's why that's why you're buying those things. So when you did that, I mean, you hired. Did you hire the interns, or were they true interns in the sense of a couple of students that you just gave free coffee to?
Well, one finished with his bachelor's. His name was Jordan. He was my first employee, and he was also prior service. He's a non-traditional student and Army guy. And there's one other guy named Cody who I brought on a couple months later, and another guy named Kevin Helms. So Kevin and Jordan, they were both new grads. And then Cody was still an undergrad. And that's how we started the business. And we did about $250,000 the first year. With them, of course, I underpaid them and didn't pay myself. So it was really more like an experiment. It was like, well, hey, can we get enough work in here to keep these guys' salary? And it worked out real well because I was a professor and they're engineering students that just graduated. So I was able to also, I think, help them really learn and grow and scale. And the beginning parts it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work. Yeah.
Josh, I'm curious. I want to kind of go back to something you said a little bit ago, talking about interpreting like customer feedback as when it comes to like the tinkering approach there. This is one of those things that, even we were talking about people earlier. I think it's such a funny thing that what we struggle with the most, we sometimes get really good at because we have to like overwork it, right? Like I'll use the easy rugby example. I'm right-handed. My left-handed pass has always been better because I had to think about it, right? I had to constantly think about it and fix it. Now on like the people side of things, like interpreting customer feedback, I would wonder if you have a little bit of a system for it because it's something that might not come as easily because you're wanting to tinker, you're not the people person, all that. What is some advice you may have for like interpreting that customer feedback or those ideas and trying to get into what they really want with it, not necessarily what they're saying and all those kind of things?
Yeah, so there's different types of projects. We do a lot of open-ended machine design. And so, we're making a machine where no machine exists. And, in that case, we're working really closely with the customers, and the feedback is pretty much weekly. So the way we produce the work, usually, we meet with every customer every week. We're a WYSIWYG organization, which means what you see is what you get. No hiding, no pretending. Just you do the work, you show the work. If you didn't do anything, you show nothing. You say, this is why. But really just WYSIWYG. You just show up, do the work. And I'm sorry, I lost track. Your question was how do
about like the process to interpreting their feedback, and I think like the kind of key there is also like understanding what they're really getting after, because people are kind of crappy at communicating that also.
So I would say there's a couple different stages. So first, one of the most important things is we got to get the we got to get what they want out of the design. And, we don't always work with, often we're not working with we're not working with design engineers. And
that's the reason they hired you, is because they're not design engineers.
Yeah. Or they're busy,
Right.
we help a lot of busy people too, but yes, they're not the ones that are they hired us, to your point, to do the work. And so in that case, the beginning part to get the customer alignment, I know you asked about the customer feedback, but that early part of the project is a big deal. And if we can really understand each other well, and people, are very just open, vulnerable, like, hey guys, this is really what we need out of this project. This is the budget we have. The more vulnerable people are, the easier it is to get kind of like alignment. But unfortunately, because of, money and lack of trust and people's inability, to, expose the truth for fear that people won't respect it. We hide information when we're doing, business, right? Don't tell people what our budgets are. We don't tell them when we really need it. There's people that will say, oh, we need this, 3 weeks faster than we actually do. And I think, so anyway, to the extent that we can get on the same page at the beginning, then it's really good. And then as we go through the project, we meet every week. We try to close the loop and make sure that, are we on the same page? Are you happy with the progress? Are we on budget? Are we on time against our schedule? So soliciting the feedback really has more to do with happiness. Unfortunately, sometimes because we're doing development, or like if you're writing code and you don't really see much, or you're writing a lot of code that has a lot of logic, but it doesn't really necessarily do a whole lot on the screen, and you're sending invoices for like, $15,000, you always get that thing where like people that can't see your output are like, are you really doing your work? Are you just taking our money? So I just say, like, all the touch points are important. At the beginning of the project, we need to get alignment, but then all the way through the project, we need to make sure we're delivering the values. For us, we're doing development or research. So we're either creating an artifact or a product, or we're answering a question that they need to know the answer to. So those are pretty easy to know when you're kind of done. But if you're not careful, not everybody agrees on what done is. You deliver the artifact and you're like, hey, look what we did. Don't you love it? It's awesome. And they're like, but it's blue. And we're like, yeah, everything else you sent us is blue. Like, but we wanted it red. And they're like, okay, no problem. That'll be 2 weeks and blah, blah, blah. We got to send it off. So there, you run into that stuff just because there's a lot of detail. And it's really hard to capture the detail. But so the way we get alignment is by trying to be very intentional every week. Every week we have a policy. Every customer gets an update about their project every week, no matter what, WYSIWYG.
Love it.
That's the way we do it, but we're open to other possibilities and suggestions. One of the things we're not good is getting like a net promoter score, or where, how many people would recommend you. We've wanted to add some of the end of delivery stuff to our projects. And so we're adding some of those things now that we didn't have before. But yeah.
You mean like a client review?
Answer, short question. Sorry about that.
Do you mean like a client review? Is that what you're putting in? What do you mean?
Well, there's, you ever get those surveys at the end of something, and it's like, hey, how likely would you be to recommend this product or service to all these other people? Well, that's a net promoter score. And depending on how you rank it, if you're above 7, that means, or maybe 8, there's some number where your likelihood of sharing it is pretty high. And so as a business, if you can close those loops after the product's delivered to really find out really how happy are they, that's one of the things that we're working on rolling out right now, to get that last little bit of feedback and try to understand, hey, they gave us a 7, why isn't it an 8? Or they gave us a 9, what do we do differently here than we did over there? But the projects are so nuanced and unique. It's like we're creating something from scratch every time. It is a little bit challenging to compare one to the other.
Yeah. One of my my project, my pocket litter, I started off with an engineering team that was, on the other side of the country, and I found it very difficult. Not any ding on them. I still highly recommend working with them, but as a hands-on guy, I'm the guy that wants to go out in the garage and grab my ratchet wrench and go take something apart or whatever. I had to shift to my engineering team local so that we could sit across the table and pass things around. How do you approach that? A client like me that is,
I was gonna say it's like the medical thing now of like somebody comes in with the doctor. It's like I know all the vocab words. I know exactly what's wrong with me. And it's like, it makes your job kind of hard to do. Yeah, how do you deal with that? That's interesting.
Yeah, so we deal with all sorts of I don't know. Not everybody wants the same thing too, and so I'm sorry. I think there were two questions there. I think you asked one, Otis, and then you asked a different one.
Yeah. Well, how do you?
I rephrased it. That's my bad.
Yeah. Well, and really, what I'm kind of carrying on with what you were talking about, and it's a fancy way of asking you, what do you do with a client that ain't happy?
Yes. Well, you can always give them their money back. And we've done that because we haven't made, we've had over 200 clients and, so we haven't made everybody happy. Usually it's just a communication issue. Or we just make it right, so you swear to your own hurt, you tell somebody you're going to do something, you got to do it. I mean, that's the way that I was raised. And I think, there's a good principle there that if you keep your word and people learn to trust you and you do what you say, but we get into situations where maybe there's something we didn't know, as a professor for 9 years, and, trained to do research and published, 60 papers on different things, in academia, you're successful if you produce knowledge, right? But, in business, you're not successful if you just produce knowledge. You need to produce results, and you need to get the customer needs what they need, and especially if you're making a machine for somebody that needs to go on their line, their manufacturing line, and the line is not up, that's money. That's a lot of money. So the way we try to, keep that alignment and make sure we don't get into trouble is really communication, and then making sure you have the right people on the job, right? Mm-hmm. You got to have the right people with the right knowledge, on the job. You shouldn't, and a big part of engineering is the whole integrity of it. You can't take work you shouldn't take. You can't take work you don't know how to do. That's the ethics of, engineering ethics of engineering that we're supposed to all be agreed to.
So the second angle on the question that I was kind of hinting at is then how do you deal with the folks who almost like want to tinker with you is the way I would kind of think of it. Like they know some and they're like, oh, come on, let me in there. And you're like, yeah, like I can see that. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, usually there's no rub. I mean, I love working with people that are excited about their projects and helping them understand things and letting them make the decisions, or, and our team does too. We don't have any need to take over or get credit for the design. Where it becomes a problem is when people don't know what they don't know, or, they don't fully understand, the physics, or they increase, they're introducing maybe some like less desirable design, trade-offs, like using a different material that we know is going to have UV degradation. Mm-hmm. And so, you leave it in your car and you're going to change, it's going to turn opaque and it's going to be ugly, and it's going to have our name on it. We don't like it, but customer might really like the way that, thing looks in that way. And when you deal with those things, they're pretty, but they don't come up much for us. Usually people know what we can do, and we're real good about letting them know what they can expect. And, really it's usually time and money. You don't finish on time or or maybe you don't get the performance that you hoped for. That's another thing too, Cam, is, when we're designing something, to say, we come up with these performance requirements. Well, we don't have anything made. It's like, hey, we need to pick and place this every 5 seconds. Well, you can do the math, you can look at the inertias, you can look at the drives, you can look at the physics, but you may have forgot that these two software packages have a 350 millisecond communication overhead, and now you're 5 minutes and 200 milliseconds. It's like, well, are you successful or not? Do they pay you? Do they withhold the payment? And if you're dealing with people that are more inclined to take from other people, then it might be harder for you to get paid for that work. If you're dealing with people that are more reasonable and understand that, of all the details, as if this is the only detail, we did pretty good. But then that 250 milliseconds, if you have 100 machines, now it's a big deal. Now it costs a lot of money, and now you got to be careful. So it's like everything, with engineering is really depends on well, what do you want? What's the objective? Where are we going? How do we get there? What is success defined as? And I mean, everything, it's just like everything else. Like if we can all agree, all have the right conversations, all agree, then we'll do well, But that doesn't happen because we don't have the same vocabulary and knowledge, and we're trying to get on the same page. We don't even have the same headspace. I know. It's just, this whole human, all these things we try to do together and learn, and we're still stuck with ourselves, and that's been my frustration. It's like at the end of the day, I learned all these books, I read all this stuff, but I wake up the same person I went to bed.
Yep.
That's the hard person to fix. Even when you know everything, you still got to implement it. Yeah.
Just thousands of years of systems built on top of the caveman brain still. Not much we can do about that.
Right, exactly, yeah.
I'm curious with that. You mentioned, and actually I'm not even going to try to lie and tell you that I remember the word you said, but you're talking about designs being like something brand new. I don't remember if generative design was what you said, but of like you were creating things that, that doesn't exist yet. You also said you won't take on a job unless you know you can get it done. How the heck do you square those two? Because those seem completely at odds to me.
I would say relatively confident in that success is likely. I mean, it's applied physics. I mean, if the physics don't tell you no, it's almost as though the divine source is giving you permission to win. I mean, like if the physics don't tell you no, if the physics don't tell you can't take a rocket to Mars, right? There's going to be a person out there that's going to go try to. Oh, we have one, Elon, right? The dude wants to go to Mars, and the physics don't prevent him, so he's going to try to get there. I think that's kind of the way all projects are. It's like we look at it from a very first principles. Is this even possible? And if it is possible, what are the order of magnitude costs that we need to kind of roll out to even come close? For example, if you're making you want to make your own automobile, well, you can go to the lot and buy an automobile for $30,000-$40,000, $20,000 to $50,000. Kind of most vehicles fall in there, and you can take it home and you can do it. But let's say you want to make your own vehicle. Well, you're going to have to roll out like $1 billion to be able to sell a car for $30,000. And we have this tension between production capacity and our ability to produce. And, when we're trying to design something that doesn't exist, it's basically like, well, the physics let you do it. If the physics let you do it, then you can win. And then it's usually the budget. It's like, well, can the budget let you do it? It's like, well, I want to make a new car. I want to beat everybody. It's got to have all these features. And, this is an example that came to us. There was a customer that came to us with a vehicle that they wanted us to design. It was just a little vehicle you'd ride around your property, relatively straightforward to design. But then when you realize, well, by the end of the day, we're going to have, say 1,200 fasteners. Well, if you want to have a CAD model that has all 1,200 fasteners, then it might take time to put them all in the right place. And, it's not like it's challenging work. It's just busy work. So somebody might be in a CAD package for weeks. But if you're charging, say, $200 an hour, they don't necessarily want to pay $80,000 to have all the fasteners in the right place. And so a lot of people don't realize that, like, listen, if you're going to pay for an engineer to do something, it's like, it's an hourly rate. It costs money. Some of the stuff is not really valuable. And, I help customers understand what they can get with their budgets. And we all do. Bravo Team, that's what we do. We kind of help people know, like, hey, what's possible? What do you want to create? You want to make this machine? And we can even help them do the business case or the ROI and all those things. But it's challenging, especially when there's no domain knowledge between parties. I don't know, I haven't studied their unique way of being. They have no idea how to, do the mechanical engineering design. So we get together, but those can also be a lot of fun if you are, fully capitalized, you have a reasonable time frame, and you have a cool project. And that's the best thing about the work that we get to do is we get to look at a bunch of interesting projects.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Believe me, version 2 and version 3 are really, really cool. But until there's some funding, nobody else is going to see what's inside my head or maybe the sketch I've drawn. That's about it. Yeah. Let's, I'm just curious, what was, as a engineer and tend to plan back to the modeling thing, that next step, that indicator that you set up to hire more, how did you project that out going forward? Because it takes time to hire good people, and it costs money too to do it.
It does, yeah. And if you get it wrong, it's even more expensive. So for us, I always believed that the most valuable thing in any company is their people. It's especially for a consulting company, it's obvious, right? But hiring for me has always been, when we first started, it was more of I wanted to hire people that really wanted to work here instead of finding people that probably we needed. In other words, I probably hired too soon. I certainly hired quickly when I should have hired a little more slowly. But I've always felt this is a good question, because what you're really asking is like, what is your philosophy? Does production capacity lead production or lag production? And in a consulting business, it's tied heavily to labor, like ours. What you're talking about is like, do you burn people out to build a business, or do you add more people and create more chaos to build the business? And I don't know that there's a really right answer. I would say that I did whatever I could at all moments in time that I could do it. So if I could squeeze them, I wanted to squeeze them. If I could get more people, I was very opportunistic. And I would just say, like, I think for me, I don't think it was more strategic and executing a strategy as much as it was like, oh crap, I need to hire more people, or, I think I get a lot because we've been successful. We get a lot more maybe credit than we deserve. My wife and I, we say we're accidentally awesome sometimes. And, it's just like when things work out and that there's a likelihood that they wouldn't work out, and you can't necessarily take credit for how they worked out. All you can be is really grateful.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Kind of, you create your own luck and create your own opportunity through the hard work. And you know what? Sometimes you just end up in the right place at the right time. And, that's a great lesson to remember. And what I learned today, I learned a new acronym. I'm sad that I've never heard it, but WYSIWYG that's the first time I've ever heard that, and that is hilarious. What you see is what you get. Yeah, I should have a name tag for me that says that, because there ain't nothing hidden here. So that was what I learned. Kim, how about you? What'd you learn?
Actually, from the same piece of the conversation, just about how important like proactive communication is to that customer journey, and making sure that you guys are on the same page from the start, especially really getting out ahead of it. But then also you got to keep talking as things go, and don't just what is it, the burden of knowledge? Don't assume people know things, or I don't know, that's one of those biases or something. So that. So I couldn't put a bow on that one for you, Dad.
Yeah, Josh, how about you, man? What'd you learn?
Yeah, along that theme, I think just talking out loud about how we do the work is I don't know, just a real good reminder that like there's probably I have a really big opportunity to maybe explain the way that we produce the work a lot better, and we don't have any form of manual or what your process is going to. I mean, people will get it, but I think we need to add that now to our the way that we explain it, the way that we do the work, maybe so it's a little bit more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well then all you got to do is take this recording, do the why do I always forget that word? Not closed caption. Transcript. Dang, God, that's a big word for me.
Josh, you can email me for the transcript. No problem.
You can take the transcript, throw it into AI, and say create a SOP. There you go.
There you go.
Boom. Josh, how do folks find you, learn more about what y'all got going on?
Well, you can always find us at Bravo Team, at Bravo Team, www.bravoteam.tech. You can find me and some blogs and thoughts at jtarbutton.com. And if you have a dog that pulls and you want to get a leash that corrects it, you can go to bravowalk.com. It's one of the products that we invented. And I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. There's not a whole lot of people with a funny last name like Tarbutton, so find me that way.
Yeah, I bet you your drill sergeant had fun with that name, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We won't go down that rabbit hole.
Not as good as McGregor, yeah.
Yeah. All right, Josh, thanks again for hanging out with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. And a special thanks to our guest, Josh Tarbutton, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at 10X Your Team. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to pass it along to other lifelong learners in your tribe so that they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, that full archive episode available at www.10xyourteam.net. Thanks again, and we'll see you all next time.